All right. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you're all doing well and that, your day has gone smoothly and everything has just kind of worked out for you. Now, I know I haven't really been here the last few days to do the Goodnight reading series, and I do apologize for that. I had actually been relatively sick. I still have an ear infection, and it was really bad at one point that I was really dizzy and it just was not great. I have a history of ear infections, so when I get them, they're really, really bad. And I am finally starting to feel good. The antibiotics I'm on are finally starting to work, so I feel really great about that. I don't feel so great though that I kind of left you guys hanging, so I do apologize for that. And with that being said, I do hope to make it up to you guys tonight by doing a 2 hour stream. As some of you know from my other reading streams and other books that I've read on here, sometimes reading over an hour can be a little bit taxing on me. So I'm kind of doing that because I feel like I owe it to you guys. And I know I have a couple of you that keep coming back and are really interested in the story and, how things are going to turn out, especially with Jane Eyre. So I thank you guys for still being with me and, giving me some grace as I kind of just go through this. But anyway, to kind of get us back up to speed, so last time we were here, we were reading about Jane and she'd been proposed to. Now, keep in mind, guys, if you are new here, this is a huge spoiler. If you don't want to be spoiled and you want to know the story from the beginning, please go and check out my lives on YouTube. You can see from the beginning all the way through. I've read every single chapter up to where we are now. So if you want to catch up, please do that. But it's now spoilers. So last time we were here, we read about Jane and how she became a governess after being basically kicked out of her aunt's house. And she was raised in a boarding school and she met Mr. Rochester after, there was an ad placed to have her become a teacher for a ward of his named Adele. So she went to Thornfield Hall and, it's the greatest experience she ever had. She felt like, she really was somebody and she is somebody at Thornfield Hall. And, she starts to develop an affection for Mr. Rochester, and he also develops affection for her in return. So the two of them start having a lot of emotional bonding to each other. Yet it doesn't really seem that way in the way that this is written, just my opinion, hot take. But anyway, you know, Mr. Rochester says, Jane, I want to marry you. I want to be with you. And of course, she being a governess and he being this, master of a gigantic Thornfield Hall, proposing to her, it's like unheard of. It's like the aristocracy trying to marry a pauper. It's unheard of. It's crazy. It's out of control, especially someone you hired, in your employ. So that happened and she's just like, no, he does love me. It's nothing's wrong. Everything's perfect. And so the day of the wedding comes and turns out Mr. Rochester's actually married. So downside is because Mr. Rochester is married, he is married to somebody who has lost their mind and they're not a person that he could see himself with anymore. It's pretty much somebody who's really lost control of their mind and she's very violent and very crazy and is not someone that can really be around other people. And for some reason, Mr. Rochester is like, oh, Jane Eyre is going to reignite my life. I'm going to have love again and I'm going to be happy. But here's the thing, back in the day, you couldn't just divorce somebody. It didn't really work that way. And there's a couple of reasons that Mr. Rochester has that we'll probably learn more about. But as of right now, Jane is so brokenhearted that he almost tricked her and she almost got married to him. So Jane is feeling like the worst cut that anybody could ever feel. And that's kind of where we are right now. And it's just sad. It's really sad to see her in this state after being somebody who is very dedicated to what she's done and a lot of the effort she's put in Granted, she's also really young. She's 18 and Mr. Rochester's like 38. Like he's got 20 years on her and he's not been secluded from the world and just been a school teacher. Like Mr. Rochester's been out in the world and everything. So it's almost kind of like he manipulated her because she's so young and so inexperienced. So it's almost even like sadder to watch in a way and kind of read through. So I feel so bad for her, being duped so. So I'm hoping that as we go through, we'll be able to learn more about why Mr. Rochester did this and the reasoning for it. It's just, it's crazy. And so now she's thinking that she's going to have to leave Thornfield. Everything's at a loss. And that's just kind of how things are going to be. And it's just nothing but sadness. And I think it's only going to get worse as we kind of go through this. So, with that being said, bear with me. I will do my best to do the voices. And yeah, so let's sally forth and see what happens next. So, we are on chapter 27. Sometime in the afternoon, I raised my head and looking round, seeing the western sun gliding to the sign of its decline, I was then asking myself, what am I to do? But the answer my mind gave was to leave Thornfield Hall at once. It was so prompt and so dread that I stopped my ears. I said that I could not bear such words now, and that I am not Edward Rochester's bride, and that is the least part of my woe, that I said to myself, and that I have wakened out of the most glorious of dreams and found them all void and vain, and that it is a horror that I could bear and master, but that I must leave him decidedly, and instantly and entirely is intolerable, and that I cannot do it. But then a voice within me averred that I should do it, and foretold that I should indeed proceed. I wrestled with my own resolution. I wanted to be weak, and I might avoid the awful passage of further suffering that I saw laid out for me. And conscience turned tyrant, and held passion by the throat, held her tautly, and she had yet but dipped her dainty foot in the slough, and swore that with the arm of the iron that he would thrust her down to unsounded depths of agony. And then I cried to myself, let me be torn away. Let another help me. No, 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 you shall tear yourself away. None shall help you. You shall have yourself pluck, and you will pluck out your right eye. Yourself cut off from your right hand, your heart shall be the victim, and you shall be the priest to transfix it. At that moment I rose up suddenly, terror-struck at the solitude which so ruthless a judge haunted, and at the silence which so awful a voice filled. My head swam, and I stood erect. I perceived that I was sickening from excitement and inanition. Neither meat nor drink had passed my lips for that day, for I had taken no breakfast, and with a strange pang I now reflected that long as I had been shut up here, no message had been sent to ask how I was, or to invite me to come down. Not even little Adele tapped at the door. Not even Mrs. Fairfax had sought me. Friends always forget those whom fortune forsakes, I murmured to myself as I withdrew the bolt and passed out. I stumbled over an obstacle. My head was dizzy, and my sight was dim, and my limbs were feeble. I could not soon recover myself. I fell, but not onto the ground, but to an outstretched arm that caught me. I looked up, and I was supported by Mr. Rochester, who just sat in a chair across from my chamber threshold. "Ah, you have come out at last," he said. "Well, I have been waiting for you long and listening. Yet not one movement have I heard, nor one sob. 5 minutes more of that death-like hush, and I should have been forced to lock like a burglar. So you shun me, I see. You shut yourself up and grieve alone. I would rather that you had come and upbraided me with vehemence. You are passionate, and I expected a scene of some kind. I was prepared for that hot rain of tears, only I wanted them to be shed on my breast, and now a senseless floor has received them, or your drenched handkerchief, but Eyre. You have not wept at all, I see. I see a white cheek and a faded eye, but no trace of tears. I suppose then that your heart has been weeping blood. Well, Jane, not a word of reproach, nothing bitter, nothing poignant, nothing to cut the feeling of a stinging passion. You sit quietly where I have placed you and regard me with a weary, passive look. Oh, Jane, I never meant to wound you thus. If a man who had just been a little ewe lamb, that was dear to him as a daughter, that ate of his bread and drank of his cup and lay in his bosom, had by some mistake slaughtered it at the shambles, he would not have rued his bloody blunder more than I now rue mine. Oh, Jane, will you ever forgive me? Oh, reader, I forgave him the moment and on the spot. There was such deep remorse in his eye, such true pity in his tone, such manly energy in his manner. And besides, there was such unchanged love in his whole look and mien that I forgave him all, yet not in words, not outwardly, only at my heart's core. You know that I am a scoundrel, Jane. Ere long he inquired wistfully, wondering, I suppose, at my continued silence and tameness, the result rather of weakness than will. Yes, sir. Then tell me so roundly and sharply. Don't spare me. I cannot. I am tired and sick, and I want some water. He heaved a sort of shuddering sigh, and taking me in his arms, carried me downstairs, and at first I did not know what room he had borne me to. All was cloudy to my gaze and sight. Presently I felt the reviving warmth of a fire. For summer as it was, I had become icy cold in my chamber. He put wine to my lips, and I tasted it and revived. Then I ate something he offered me, and was soon myself. I was in the library, sitting in his chair, and he was quite near. If I could go out of life now, without too sharp a pang, it would be well for me. And then I thought, then I should not have to make the effort of cracking my heartstrings and rending them among Mr. Rochester's, that I must leave him, it appears, and I do not want to leave him. I cannot leave him. Oh, Jane, how are you now? Oh, my dearest Jane. Much better, sir. I shall be well soon. Please, taste the wine again, Jane. I obeyed him, and then he put the glass on the table and stood before me, and looked at me attentively. Suddenly he turned away, and with an inarticulate exclamation, full of passionate emotion, some of the kind that he walked fast through the room and came back. He stooped towards me as if to kiss me, but I remembered the caresses were now forbidden. I turned my face away and put his aside. What? How is this? He exclaimed hastily. Oh, I know. You won't kiss the husband of Bertha Mason. You consider my arms filled and my embraces appropriated. At any rate, is there any or neither room for claim for me, sir? Why, Jane, I will spare you the trouble of much talking. I will answer for you. Because I have a wife already, you would reply, I guess rightly. Yes. If you think so, you must have a strange opinion of me. You must regard me as a plotting profligate, as a base and low rake who has been simulating and disinterested love in order to draw you into a snare deliberately laid, and strip you of honor and rob you of self-respect. What do you say to that? I see that you say nothing in the first place, yet you are faint still, and you have enough to do to draw your breath, and in the second place you cannot yet accustom yourself to accuse and revile me. And besides, the floodgates of tears are open, and they would rush out if you spoke much, and you have no desire to expostulate, to upbraid, and to make a scene. You are thinking how to act. Talking how you to consider is of no use. I know you. I am on my guard. Sir, I do not wish to act against you, I said, and my unsteady voice warned me to curtail my sentence. Oh, not in your sense of the word, but in mine you are scheming to destroy me. You have as good as said that I am a married man, and as a married man you will shun me, keep me out of my way, just now as you have just refused to kiss me. You intend to make yourself a complete stranger to me, to live under this roof only as Adele's governess. If ever I say a friendly word to you, if ever a friendly feeling inclines you again to me, you will say that I am a man who nearly made you his mistress, and that you must be ice and rock to me, and ice and rock you will accordingly become. I cleared and steadied my voice to reply. All is changed about me, sir. I must change too. There is no doubt of that, and to avoid fluctuations of feeling and continual combats with recollections and associations, there is only one way. Adele must have a new governess, sir. Oh, Adele will go to school. I have settled that already. Nor do I mean to torment you with the hideous associations and recollections of Thornfield Hall. This accursed place, this tent of action, this insolent vault, offering the ghastliness of living death to the light of the open sky, this narrow stone hell, with its real fiend, worse than a legion of such as we imagine. Oh, Jane, you shall not stay here, and nor will I. I was wrong ever to bring you to Thornfield Hall, knowing as I did how it was haunted. I charged them to conceal from you, before I ever saw you, all knowledge of the curse of the place, merely because I feared Adele would never have a governess to stay if she knew what inmate she had housed, and my plans would not permit me to remove the maniac elsewhere. Though I possess an old house, Ferdinand Manor, even more retired and hidden than this, where I could have lodged her safely enough, had not a scruple about the unhealthiness of the situation, in the heart of a wood, made by my conscience, and recoil from arrangement. Probably those damp walls would soon have eased me of her charge. But to each villain his own vice, and mine is not a tendency to indirect assassination, even of that which I most hate. Concealing the mad woman's neighborhood from you, however, was something like covering a child with a cloak and laying it down near a upas tree. That a demon's vicinage is poisoned, and it always was. But I'll shut up Thornfield Hall. I'll nail up the front door and board the lower windows. I'll give Mrs. Poole 200 a year to live here with my wife, as you term that fearful hag. Grace will do much for money, and she will have her son, the keeper of Grimsby Retreat, to bear her company, and be at hand to give her aid in the paroxysms, when my wife is prompted by the familiar to burn people in their beds at night, and to stab them, to bite their flesh from their bones, and so on. Sir, I interrupted, you are inexorable for the unfortunate lady. You speak of her with hate, with vindictive antipathy. It is cruel, and she cannot help being mad. Jane, my little darling, so I will call you, for you are so to me. You don't know what you are talking about. You misjudge me again. It is not because she is mad that I hate her. If you are mad, do you think that I should hate you? I do indeed, sir. Then you are mistaken, and you know nothing about me, and nothing about the sort of love of which I am capable. Every atom of your flesh is dear to me as my own. In pain and sickness it would still be dear. Your mind is my treasure, and if it were broken, it would be my treasure still. If you raved at my arms, they would confine you, and not a strait waistcoat. Your grasp, even in fury, would have a charm for me. If you flew at me wildly as that woman did this morning, I should receive you in such an embrace, at least as fond as if it would be restrictive. I should not think to shrink from you with disgust as I did from her. In your quiet moments you should have no watcher and no nurse but me. I could hang over you with the untiring tenderness, though you gave me no smile in return and never weary of gazing into your eyes, though they had no longer a ray of recognition for me. But why do I follow that train of ideas? I was talking of removing you from Thornfield. All you know is prepared for prompt departure. Tomorrow you shall go, and I only ask you to endure one more night under this roof, Jane, and then farewell to its miseries and terrors forever. I have a place to repair to which will be a secure sanctuary from the hateful reminiscences and from the unwelcome intrusion, even from falsehood and slander. And take Adele with you, sir, I interrupted. She will be a companion for you. What do you mean, Jane? I told you that I would send Adele to school, and what do I want with a child for a companion? And not my own child, a French dancer's bastard. And why do you importune me about her? I say, why do you assign Adele to me for a companion? Well, you spoke of retirement, sir, and retirement and solitude are too dull. They are too dull for you. Solitude, solitude, he reiterated with irritation. I see. I must come to an explanation. I don't know what sphinx-like expression is forming in your countenance. You are to share my solitude. Do you understand? I shook my head, and it required a degree of courage, excited as he was becoming, even to risk that mute sign of dissent. He had been walking fast about the room, and when he stopped as if suddenly rooted to one spot, he looked at me long and hard. I turned my eyes from him and fixed them on the fire, and tried to assume and maintain a quiet, collected aspect. Now, for the hitch in Jane's character, he said at last, slowly becoming calm, and I had half expected him to speak. The reel of silk is run smoothly enough so far, but I always knew that there would be some knot and a puzzle, and here it is. Now, for vexation and exasperation and endless trouble. By God, I long to exert a fraction of Samson's strength and break the entanglement like tow. He recommenced his walk, but soon again stopped, and this time just before me. Jane, will you hear reason? Because if you won't, I will try violence. His voice was becoming harsh and sore, his look of a man who is just about to burst to an insufferable bond and plunge headlong into a wild license. I saw that in another moment, with one impetus of frenzy more, I should be able to do nothing with him. The present, the passing second of time, was all I had in which to control and restrain him. A movement of repulsion, flight, fear would have sealed my doom, and his. But I was not afraid, not in the least. I felt an inward power, a sense of influence which supported me. The crisis was perilous, but not without its charm, such as the Indian perhaps feels when he slips over the rapid in his canoe. I took hold of his clenched hand and loosened the contorted fingers and said to him soothingly, "Sit down. I'll talk to you for as long as you like, and hear that all you have to say, whether reasonable or unreasonable." He sat down, and he did not get leave to speak directly. I had been struggling with tears for some time, and I had taken great pains to repress them, because I knew that he would not like to see me weep. Now, however, I considered it well to let them flow as freely and as long as they liked. If the flood annoyed him, then so much the better. So I gave way and cried heartily. Soon I heard him earnestly entreating me to be composed, and I said that I could not while he was in such a passion. "But I am not angry, Jane. I only love you too well, and you had steeled your little pale face with such a resolute and frozen look that I could not endure it. Oh, hush now, wipe your eyes." His softened voice announced that he was subdued. So I, in my turn, became calm, and now he made an effort to rest his head on my shoulder. But I would not permit it. Then he would draw me to him. Oh, no. "Jane, Jane," he said in such an accent of sadness that it thrilled along every nerve that I had. "Oh, you don't love me then. It was only my station and the rank of my wife that you valued. Now that you think me disqualified to become your husband, you recoil from my touch as if I were some toad or ape." These words cut me. Yet what could I do or say? I ought probably have done or said nothing, but I was so tortured by a sense of remorse at thus hurting his feelings, I could not control the wish to drop bomb where I had been wounded. "But I do love you," I said, "more than ever, but I must not show or indulge the feeling, and this is the last time I must express it." "The last time, Jane? What do you think? You can live without me and see me daily, and yet, if you still love me, be always cold and distant?" "No, sir, that I am certain I could not, and therefore I see that there is but one way, but you will be furious if I mention it." "Oh, mention it, if I storm that you have an art of weeping." "Mr. Rochester, I must leave you." "For how long, Jane? For a few minutes while you smooth your hair, which is somewhat disheveled, and bathe your face, which looks feverish." "I must leave Adele in Thornfield. I must part with you for my whole life. I must begin a new existence among strange faces and strange scenes." "Of course, I told you that you should. I pass over the madness about parting from me, and you mean you must become a part of me. As to the new existence, it is all right, and you shall yet be my wife, and I am not married, and you shall be Mrs. Rochester, both virtually and nominally. I shall keep only to you as long as you and I live, and you shall go to a place that I have in the south of France. Oh, it is a whitewashed villa on the shores of the Mediterranean, and there you shall live a happy life, guarded and most innocent life. Oh, never fear that I wish to lure you into error, to make you my mistress. Oh, come now, why do you shake your head? Oh, Jane, you must be reasonable, or in truth I shall become frantic again." His voice and hand quivered. His large nostrils dilated. His eyes blazed, and still I dared to speak. "Sir, your wife is living. That is a fact acknowledged this morning by yourself. If I lived with you as you desire, I should then be your mistress, and to say otherwise would be sophistical, and it is false." "Jane, I am not a gentle-tempered man, and you forget that. I am not long-enduring. I am not cool and dispassionate. Out of pity to me and yourself, put your finger on my pulse, feel how it throbs, and beware." He bared his wrist and offered it to me. The blood was forsaking his cheek and lips, and they were growing livid. I was distressed on all hands. To agitate him thus deeply, by a resistance he so abhorred, and it was cruel. To yield was out of the question, and I did what human beings do instinctively when they are driven to other extremity. I looked for aid to one higher than man. The words, "Oh, God, help me!" they burst involuntarily from my lips. "Oh, I am a fool!" cried Mr. Rochester suddenly. "I keep telling her that I am not married, and I do explain to her that why. Oh, I forget that she knows nothing of the character of that woman or of the circumstances attending my infernal union with her. Oh, I am certain, Jane. Oh, please agree with me in opinion, and when she knows all that I know, oh, just put your hand in mine, Jane, that I may yet have the evidence of touch as well of sight. Oh, to prove that you are near me, and I will, in a few words, show that you are the real state of the case. Oh, can you listen to me?" "Yes, sir, for hours, if you will." "I only ask minutes, Jane. Did you ever hear or know that I was not the eldest son of my house, that I had once a brother older than I?" "Yes, I remember that Mrs. Fairfax told me so once." "And again, did you ever hear that my father was an avaricious and grasping man?" "I have understood something to that effect." "Well, Jane, being so, it was his resolution to keep the property together. He could not bear the idea of dividing his estate and leaving me a fair portion. All he resolved should go to my brother Roland, yet as little he could endure was that son of his should be a poor man. I must be provided for by a wealthy marriage, and he sought me a partner betimes. Mr. Mason, a West Indian planter and merchant, was his old acquaintance. He was certain that his possessions were real and vast, and he made inquiries. Mr. Mason, he found, had a son and a daughter, and he learned from him that he could and would give the latter a fortune of 30,000 pounds. That sufficed, and when I left college I was sent out to Jamaica to espouse a bride already courted for me. My father said nothing about her money, but he told me Miss Mason was the boast of Spanish Town for her beauty, and this was no lie. I found her a fine woman, and in the style of Blanche Ingram, tall, dark, and majestic. Her family wished to secure me because I was of a good race, and so did she. They showed her to me at parties, and splendidly dressed she was. Oh, I seldom saw her alone, and had very little private conversation with her. She flattered me, and lavishly displayed for all my pleasure her charms and accomplishments. All the men in her circle seemed to admire her and envy me. I was dazzled, stimulated. Oh, my senses were excited, and being ignorant, raw, and inexperienced, I thought that I loved her. There is no folly so besotted than that the idiotic rivalries of society, the prurience, the rashness, and the blindness of youth. Oh, will not hurry a man to its commission. Her relatives encouraged me, competitors picked me, and she allured me. A marriage was achieved almost before I knew where I was. Oh, I have no respect for myself when I think of that act. An agony of inward contempt masters me. I never loved. I never esteemed. I did not even know her. I was not sure of the existence of one virtue in her nature. I had marked neither modesty, nor benevolence, nor candor, nor refinement in her mind or manners. And I married her. Gross, groveling, mole-eyed blockhead that I was! With less sin I might have. But let me remember to whom I am speaking. My bride's mother I had never seen. I understood that she was dead. The honeymoon was over then, and I learned my mistake. She was only mad and shut up in a lunatic asylum. There was a younger brother, too, a complete dumb idiot, the elder one whom you have seen, and whom I cannot hate whilst I abhor him and all of his kindred, because he has some grains of affection in his feeble mind, shown in the continued interest that he takes in his wretched sister, and also in a dog-like attachment that he once bore me, and will probably be in the same state one day. My father and my brother Roland knew all of this, but they thought only of the 30,000 pounds and joined in the plot against me. These were vile discoveries, but except for the treachery of concealment, I should have made them no subject of reproach to my wife, even when I found her nature wholly alien to mine, her tastes obnoxious to me, her cast of mind common, low, narrow, and singularly incapable of being led to anything higher, expanded to anything larger. And when I found that I could not pass a single evening, nor even a single hour of the day with her in comfort, that kindly conversation could not be sustained between us, because whatever topic I started immediately received from her a turn at once coarse and trite, perverse and imbecilic, and when I perceived that I should never have a quiet or settled household because no servant would bear the continued outbreaks of her violent and unreasonable temper, or the vexations of her absurd, contradictory, exacting orders, even when I restrained myself, I eschewed upbraiding, I curtailed remonstrance, I tried to endeavor my repentance and disgust in secret, I repressed the deep antipathy that I felt. Jane, I will not trouble you with the abominable details. Some strong words shall express what I have to say. I have lived with that woman upstairs 4 years, and before that time she had tried me indeed. Her character ripened and developed with frightful rapidity. Her vices sprang up fast and rank. They were so strong that only cruelty could check them, and I would not use cruelty. What a pygmy intellect she had, and what giant propensities! How fearful were the curses those propensities entailed on me! Bertha Mason, the true daughter of an infamous mother, dragged me through all the hideousness and the degrading agonies which must now attend a man bound to a wife at once intemperate and unchaste. My brother in the interval was dead, and at the end of the 4 years my father died too, and I was rich enough now, yet poor to hideous indignance, a nature the most gross, impure, and depraved I ever saw, was then associated with mine, and called by the law and the society a part of me. I could not rid myself of it by any legal proceedings, for the doctors discovered that my wife was mad, and her excesses were prematurely developed in the germs of insanity. Oh, Jane, you don't like my narrative. You look almost sick. Shall I defer the rest to another day? No, sir. Please finish it now. I pity you, and I do earnestly pity you. Pity, Jane. From some people it is a noxious and insulting sort of tribute, which one is justified in hurling back in the teeth of those who offer it. But that is the sort of pity native to callous, selfish hearts. It is a hybrid and egotistical pain at hearing of woes, crossed with ignorant contempt for those who have endured them. But that is not your pity, Jane. It is not the feeling of which your whole face is at full at this moment, with which your eyes are now almost overflowing, with which your heart is heaving, with which your hand is trembling in mine. Your pity, my darling, is the suffering mother of love. Its anguish is very natal pang of the divine passion. I accept it, Jane. Let the daughter have a free advent. My arms wait to receive her. Now, sir, please proceed. What did you do when you found that she was mad?
Jane, I approached the verge of despair. A remnant of self-respect was all that intervened between me and the gulf. In the eyes of the world, I was doubtless covered with grimy dishonor. But I resolved to be clean in my own sight, and to the last I repudiated the contamination of her crimes and wrenched myself from the connection with her mental defects. Still, society associated my name and person with hers. I yet saw her and heard her daily. Something of her breath mixed with the air that I breathed, and besides, I remembered that I had once been her husband. That recollection was then, and is now, inexpressibly odious to me. Moreover, I knew that while she lived, that I could never be the husband of another, and better, wife. And though 5 years my senior, her family and her father had lied to me even in that particularity of her age, and she was likely to live as long as I, being as robust in frame as she was infirm in mind. Thus, at the age of 26, I was hopeless. So, one night I had been awakened by her yells, since the medical men had pronounced her mad, and she had, of course, been shut up. It was a fiery West Indian night, one of the description that frequently precede the hurricanes of those climes. And being unable to sleep in bed, I got up and I opened the window. The air was like sulphur steams. I could find no refreshment anywhere. Mosquitoes came buzzing in and hummed sullenly around the room. The sea, which I could hear from thence, rumbled dull like an earthquake. Black clouds were casting up over it, and the moon was setting in the waves, broad and red, like a hot cannonball. She threw her last bloody glance over the world, quivering with that ferment of tempest. I was physically influenced by the atmosphere and the scene, and my ears were filled with the curses of the maniac still shrieking out, and wherein she momentarily mingled my name with such a tone of demon hate, such language. No professed harlot had ever a fouler vocabulary than she. Though 2 rooms off, I heard every word. The thin partitions of the West India house was opposing but slight obstruction to her wolfish cries. This life, I had said at that moment, is hell, this air. Those are the sounds of the bottomless pit, and I have a right to deliver myself from it if I can. The sufferings of this mortal state will leave me with the heavy flesh that now cumbers my soul. Of the fanatic's burning eternity, I have no fear. There is not a future state worse than this present one. Oh, let me break away and go home to God. I had said this to the world and to God himself. And whilst at that moment I had knelt down and unlocked a trunk which contained a brace of loaded pistols, I meant to shoot myself. I only entertained the intention for a moment. For not being insane, the crisis of exquisite and unalloyed despair which had originated the wish and the design of self-destruction was past in a second. A wind fresh from Europe blew over the ocean and rushed through the open casement. The storm broke and steamed and thundered and blazed, and the air grew pure. Then I framed and fixed a resolution. While I walked under the dripping oranges of my wet garden and amongst its drenched pomegranates and pineapples, and while the refulgent dawn of the tropics kindled around me, I reasoned thus, Jane, and now listen. For it was true wisdom that consoled me in that hour and showed me the right path to follow. The sweet wind from Europe was still whispering in the refreshed leaves, and the Atlantic was thundering in glorious liberty. My heart dried up and scorched for a long time. It swelled to the tone and filled with living blood. My being longed for renewal. My soul thirsted for a pure draught. I saw hope revive, and felt regeneration possible, and from a flowery arch at the bottom of my garden I gazed over the sea. Oh, bluer than the sky! The old world was beyond, and clear prospects opened thus. Hope told me to go, and to live again in Europe, and that there is not unknown what a sullied name that I had bared, and nor what a filthy burden that was bound to me, and that I had to take my wife, the maniac, with me to England, to confine her with due attendance and precautions at Thornfield, then travel myself to that clime, and form a new tie. That woman who was so abused and enjoyed my so longed suffering, and sullied my name, and so outraged my honor, and so blighted my youth, I forementioned to myself that she was not my wife, and nor was I her husband. See, that she cared for her conditional demands, and that I have done all that God and humanity required of me, and that I wanted her identity and her connection with me to be buried in oblivion, and that I was not bound to impart them to no living being, to place her only in safety and comfort, and to shelter her degradation with secrecy, and to leave her. And so I acted precisely on this suggestion to myself, and my father and brother had not made my marriage known to their acquaintances, because in the very first letter I wrote to apprise them of the union, it had already begun to experience extreme disgust from its consequences, and from the family character and constitution seeing the hideous future opening to me. I added an urgent charge to keep it secret, and very soon the infamous and urgent charge had been the conduct of my wife, that had been selected to me by my father, and that she was to make him blush to her own as his daughter-in-law. Far from desiring to publish the connection, he became as anxious to conceal it as myself. To England, then, I conveyed her, a fearful voyage that I had with such a monster in the vessel, and glad was I when I at last got her to Thornfield, and saw her safely lodged in that third-story room, of whose secret inner chamber you have seen, and where she has been resided for 10 years, and is transformed into a wild beast's den, a goblin's cell. I had some trouble in finding an attendant for her, as it was necessary to select one on whose fidelity and dependence could be placed, for her ravings would inevitably betray my secret. Besides, she had lucid intervals of days and sometimes weeks, which she filled up with abuse of me. At last I hired Grace Poole from the Grimsby retreat. She and the surgeon Carter are the only two I have ever admitted to my confidence. Mrs. Fairfax may indeed have suspected something, but she could have gained no precise knowledge as to the facts. Grace has, on the whole, proved a very good keeper, though, owing partly to a fault of her own, of which it appears nothing can cure her, and which is incident to her harassing profession, her vigilance has been more than once lulled and baffled. The lunatic is both cunning and malignant. She has never failed to take advantage of her guardian's temporary lapses, and once to secret the knife from which she stabbed her brother, and twice to possess herself of the key to her cell, and to issue therefrom and in the night time. On the first of these occasions, she perpetrated the attempt to burn me in my bed, and on the second she paid that ghastly visit to you. Oh, I thank Providence that who watched over you, that she then spent her fury on your wedding apparel, which perhaps brought back vague reminiscences of her own bridal days. But on what might have happened, I cannot endure to reflect. When I think of the thing which flew at my throat this morning, and hanging on its black and scarlet visage over the nest of my dove, my blood curdles.
And what, sir? I asked, while he paused. What did you do when you had settled her here? Where did you go?
What did I do, Jane? I transformed myself into a will-o'-the-wisp. Where did I go? I pursued wanderings as wild as those of the March spirit. I sought the continent, and went devious through all the lands. Oh, my fixed desire was to seek and find a good and intelligent woman whom I could love, a contrast to the fury that I left at Thornfield.
But you could not marry, sir.
I had determined, and I was convinced, that I could and ought. It was not my original intention to deceive, as I have deceived you. I meant to tell my tale plainly, and to make my proposals openly, and it appeared to me so absolutely rational that I should be considered free to love and to be loved. I never doubted some woman might find and would be willing and able to understand my case and accept me, and in spite of the curse with which I am burdened.
Well, sir?
When you are inquisitive, Jane, you always make me smile, and when you open your eyes like an eager bird and make every now and then a restless movement, as if answers in speech did not flow fast enough for you, and you wanted to read the tablet of one's heart. Oh, but before I go on, tell me what you mean by your "well, sir." It is a small phrase, and it is very frequent with you, and which many a time has drawn me on and on through interminable talk. I don't very know well why.
Well, I mean, what next, and how did you proceed, and what came of such an event?
And precisely, and what do you wish to know more now?
Whether you found anyone you liked, and whether you asked her to marry you, and what she said.
Ah, I can tell you whether I found someone that I liked, and whether I asked her to marry me. But what she has said is yet to be recorded in the book of fate. For 10 long years I roved about, living first in one capital and then another, sometimes in St. Petersburg, oftener in Paris, occasionally in Rome and Naples and Florence. Provided with plenty of money and the passport of an old name, I could choose my own society. No circles were closed to me, and I sought my ideal of a woman amongst English ladies, French courtesans, Italian signoras, and German Gräfinnen. I could not find her, and sometimes for a fleeting moment I thought I caught a glance, I heard a tone, or beheld a form, which announced the realization of my dream. But I was presently undeserved. You are not to suppose that I desired perfection, either of mind or person. I longed only for what suited me, for the antipodes of Creole, and I longed vainly. Amongst them all that I found was not one whom, had I been ever so free, I, warned as I was of the risks, the horrors, and the loathings of incongruous unions, would I have asked to marry me. Disappointment made me reckless, and I tried dissipation and never debauchery. That I hated and hate. That was my Indian Messalina's attribute, rooted disgust as it, and it restrained me as much. Even in pleasure, any enjoyment that bordered on riot seemed to approach me to her and her vices, and I eschewed it. Yet I could not live alone, so I tried companionship of mistresses. The first I chose was Celine Varnes, another of those steps which make a man spurn himself when he recalls them. You already know what she was, and how my liaison with her terminated. She had two successors, an Italian, Giancianta, and a German, Clara, both considered singularly handsome. What was their beauty to me in a few weeks? Giacinta was unprincipled and violent. I tired of her in 3 months. And Clara was honest and quiet, but heavy, mindless, and unimpressionable. Not one whit to my taste. I was glad to give her a sufficient sum to set her up in a good line of business, and to so get decently rid of her that way. But Jane, I see by your face that you are not forming a very favorable opinion of me just now. You think me an unfeeling and loose-principled rake, don't you? I don't like you so well as I have done sometimes, and indeed, sir, did it not seem to you that in the least wrong to live that way, first with one mistress and then another? You talk of it as a mere matter of course. It was with me, and I did not like it. It was a groveling fashion of existence. I shall never return to it, and hiring a mistress is the next worst thing to buying a slave. Both are often by nature and always by position inferior, and to live familiarly with the inferiors is degrading. And I now hate the recollection of the time that I passed with Celine and Giacinta and Clara. I felt wretched. And at the truth of these words, and I drew from them the certain inference that I were so far to forget myself and all the teaching that had been instilled to me, and under any pretext and with any justification, through any temptation to become the successor of these poor girls, he would one day regard me with the same feeling which now in his mind desecrated their memory. I did not give utterance to this conviction. It was enough to feel it, and I impressed it on my heart, and that it might remain there to serve me as aid in the time of trial. Now, Jane, why don't you say, well, sir? I have not done, and you are looking grave. You disapprove of me still, I see. But let me come to the point. Last January, rid of all mistresses and in a harsh, bitter frame of mind, the result of useless roving, a lonely life, and corroded with disappointment and sourly disposed against all men, and especially against all womankind, for I began to regard the notion of an intellectual, faithful, and loving woman as a mere dream, and recalled by business, I came back to England. And on that frosty winter afternoon I rode in the sight of Thornfield Hall. Oh, the abhorred spot! And I expected no peace and no pleasure there. And on a stile in Hay Lane I saw a quiet little figure sitting by itself. I passed it negligently, and as I did, the pollard willow opposite to it, I had no presentiment of what it would be to me, no inward warning of the arbitress of my life. Oh, my genius for inward warning, for that good or evil waited there in a humble guise. I did not know it, even when, on the occasion of Messer's accident, it came up and gravely offered me help. Oh, it was so childish and slender a creature. It seemed as if a linnet had hopped onto my foot and proposed to bear me on its tiny wing. I was surly, but the thing would not go. It stood by me with strange perseverance, and looked and spoke with a sort of authority. That I must be aided, and by that hand I was aided. And once I had pressed that frail shoulder, something new, a fresh sap, a sense stole into my frame. It was well that I had learnt that this elf must return to me, that it belonged to my house down below, or I could not have felt it pass away from under my hand and seen it vanish behind the dim hedge without a singular regret. I heard you come home that night. Jane, though probably you are not aware that I thought of you or watched for you. The next day I observed you, myself unseen, for half an hour, while you played with Adele in the gallery. It was a snowy day, and I recollect that you could not go outdoors. I was in my room. The door was ajar. I could both listen and watch. Adele claimed your outward attention for a while, yet I fancied your thoughts were elsewhere. But you were very patient with her, my little Jane. You talked to her and amused her for a long time. And when at last she left you, you lapsed at once into a deep reverie. You betook yourself to her slowly, to pace the gallery. Now and then, in passing a casement, you glanced out at the thick falling snow, and you listened to the sobbing wind, and again you paced gently on and dreamed. I think those day visions were not dark, and there was a pleasurable illumination in your eye occasionally, a soft excitement in your aspect, which told of no bitter, bilious, or hypochondriac brooding. Your look revealed rather the sweet musings of youth, when its spirit follows on willing wings to the flight of hope up and on to an ideal heaven. The voice of Mrs. Fairfax speaking to a servant in the hall then had wakened you. And how curiously you smiled too, and at yourself, Jane. Ooh, there was much sense in your smile. It was very shrewd, and it seemed to make light of your own abstraction. It seemed to say that you had fine visions and that they were not all well. But I must understand that they were absolutely real and unreal to you, and that you had a rosy sky and a green flowering Eden in your brain. But without, you were perfectly aware, and that you had lies in a row track to travel, and around me to gather the tempest to encounter. At that moment you had ran downstairs and demanded of Mrs. Fairfax some occupation. The weekly house accounts to make up, or something of that sort, I think it was. I was vexed with you for getting out of my sight. And so I impatiently waited for evening, when I might summon you to my presence, for an unusual to me, a perfectly new character that I suspected was yours. I desired to search it deeper and to know it better. You entered the room with a look and an air at once shy and independent. You were quaintly dressed, much as you are now, and I made you talk. Ere long I found you full of strange contrasts. Your garb and manner was restricted by rule. Your air was often diffident, and altogether that of one of a refined nature, but absolutely unused to society, and a good deal afraid of making herself disadvantageously copious and conspicuous, and by some solecism or blunder. Yet, when addressed, you lifted a keen, a daring and glowing eye to your interlocutor's face, and there was that penetration and power in each glance you gave, and when plied by close questions, you found ready and round answers. Very soon you seemed to get used to me, and I believe that you felt the existence of sympathy between you and your grim and cross master Jane, for it was astonishing to see how quickly a certain pleasant ease tranquilized your manner. Snarl as I would, you showed no surprise, no fear, annoyance, or displeasure at my moroseness, and you watched me, and now and then smiled at me with a simple yet sagacious gaze that I cannot describe. I was at once content and stimulated with what I saw. I liked what I had seen, and wished, oh, how I wished to see more. Yet for a long time I treated you distantly and sought your company rarely. I was an intellectual epicure, and I wished to prolong the gratification of making this novel and piquant acquaintance. Besides, for a while troubled I was. I had a haunting fear that if I handled the flower freely as its bloom would fade from me, the sweet charm of freshness would then leave it so. I did not then know that it was no transitory blossom, but rather a radiant resemblance of one cut in an indestructible gem. Moreover, I wished to see whether you would seek me if I shunned you. But you did not. You kept in your schoolroom, as still as your own desk and easel, as if by chance I met you, you passed me as soon, and with as little token of recognition as was consistent with your respect. Your habitual expression in those days, Jane, oh, it was a thoughtful look, and not despondent, for you were not sickly, but not buoyant, for you had little hope and no actual pleasure. I wondered what you thought of me, or if you ever thought of me, and resolved to find this out. So I resumed my notice of you, and there was something glad in your glance and genial in your manner. Oh, when you conversed, I saw that you had a social heart, and it was the silent schoolroom, it was the tedium of your life that made you mournful. I permitted myself the delight of being kind to you, and kindness, oh, it stirred emotions soon. Your face became soft in expression, and your tones gentle. I liked my name pronounced in your lips, and that graceful and grateful happy accent. I used to enjoy a chance meeting with you, Jane, and at this time there was a curious hesitation in your manner, and you glanced at me with that slight trouble, that hovering doubt, and you did not know what my caprice would be, whether I was going to play the master and be stern, or the friend and the benignant. I was now too fond of you often to stimulate the first whim, and when I stretched my hand out cordially as a bloom and light and bliss rose to your young and wistful features, I had much ado often to avoid straining you then and there to my heart. Don't talk any more of those days, sir, I interrupted, dashing away some tears from my eyes. His language was torture to me, for I knew what I must do, and do soon. And all these reminiscences and these revelations of his feelings only made my work more difficult. No, Jane, he returned. What necessity is there to dwell on the past when the present is so much surer, the future so much brighter? I shuddered to hear the infatuated assertion. You see now how the case stands, do you not? He continued. After a youth and my manhood passed half in an unutterable misery and half in a dreary solitude, I have for the first time found what I can truly love. I have found you, Jane. You are my sympathy. For my better self, my good angel, I am bound to you with a strong attachment. I think you good, gifted, and lovely. A fervent and solemn passion is conceived in my heart. It leans to you, it draws you to my center and the spring of life. It wraps my existence about you, and, kindling in pure, powerful flame, it fuses you and me in one. It was because that I felt and knew this that I resolved to marry you. To tell me that I already have a wife is an empty mockery. You know now that I had a hideous demon, and that I was wrong to attempt to deceive you, but I feared a stubbornness that exists in your character. I feared early instilled prejudice. I wanted to have you safe before hazarding confidences. This was cowardly. I should have appealed to your nobleness and magnanimity. I should have done that at first, as I do now, and opened up to you plainly my life of agony, and described to you my hunger and my thirst for a higher and worthier existence, and shown to you not my resolution, and that word is weak, but my resistless bent to love faithfully and well where I am faithful, and well loved in return. Then I should have asked you to accept my pledge of fidelity and to give me yours. Oh, Jane, please give it to me now. A pause. Why are you silent, Jane? I was experiencing an ordeal. A hand of fiery iron grasped at my vitals. It was a terrible moment. It was full of struggle, blackness, and burning. Not a human being that ever lived could wish to be loved better than I was loved, and him who thus loved me, whom I absolutely worshipped. And I must renounce love and idol, and one drear word comprised my intolerable duty. Depart! Jane, you understand what I want of you. Just this promise. Please just say that you will be mine, Mr. Rochester. Say that I am yours. Mr. Rochester, I will not be yours. Another long silence. Jane, recommenced he, and with a gentleness that broke me down with grief and turned me stone cold with ominous terror, for this still voice was the pant of a lion rising. Jane, oh Jane, do you mean to go one way in the world and let me go in another? I do. Jane, oh, do you mean it now? I do. And now, softly kissing my forehead and cheek, I do, extricating myself from restraint rapidly and completely. Oh, Jane, this is bitter, this is wicked. It would not be wicked to love me. It would to be obeying you. A wild look raised his brows and crossed his features. He rose, but forebore yet. I laid my hand on the back of the chair for support. I shook, I feared, but I resolved. One instant, Jane. Give me one glance to my horrible life when you are gone. All happiness will be torn away with you. What then is left? For wife that I have, but the maniac upstairs as well. Might you refer to me some corpse in yonder churchyard? What shall I do, Jane? Where turn for companion and for some hope? Do as I do, and trust in God and yourself. Believe in heaven, and hope to meet again there. Then you will not yield? No. Then you condemn me to live a wretched life and to die accursed. His voice began to rise. I advise you to live sinless, and I wish you to die tranquil. Then you snatch love and innocence from me. You fling me back on lust for a passion, vice for an occupation. Mr. Rochester, I no more assign this fate to you than I grasp at it for myself. We were born to strive and endure, and you as well as I do know, and do so. You will forget me before I forget you. You make me a liar by such language. You sully my honor. I declared that I would not change, and I could not change. You tell me to my face that I shall soon change. And what a distortion in your judgment, what a perversity in your ideas. It is proved by your conduct that it is better to drive a fellow creature to despair than to transgress a mere human law. No man being injured by the breach, for you have neither relatives nor acquaintances whom need fear to offend by living with me. This was true, and while he spoke, my very conscience and reason turned traitors against me, and charged me with the crime in resisting him. They spoke almost as loud as feeling, and then clamored wildly, and told me to comply, and to think of his misery, and to think of his danger, and to look at his state when he would be left alone, and remember his headlong nature, and consider the recklessness and following on that despair. To soothe him, to save him, to love him, to tell him that I loved him and that I would be his, and that who in the world would care for me, or who would be injured by what I would do? Still, indomitable was the reply. I care for myself. The more solitary, the more friendless, and the more unsustained I am, the more I will respect myself. I will keep the law given by God, sanctioned by man. I will hold to the principles received by me when I was sane and not mad, as I am now. Laws and principles are not for the times when there is no temptation. They are for such moments as this, when body and soul rise in mutiny against their rigor, stringent as they are and inviolate that they shall be. If at my individual convenience I might break them, what would be their worth? They have worth. So I have always believed, and I cannot believe it now, and it is because I am insane, quite insane, with my veins running fire and my heart beating faster, that I can count its throbs, and preconceived opinions, foregone determinations, are all that I have at this hour to stand by. There, I plant my foot. And I did. Mr. Rochester, reading my countenance, saw that I had done so. His fury was wrought to the highest, and that he must yield to it for a moment, whatever followed. He crossed the floor and seized my arm and grasped my waist. He seemed to devour me with a flaming glance. Physically, I felt at the moment powerless as stubble exposed on the drought and the glow of the furnace. Mentally, I still possessed my soul, and with it the certainty of ultimate safety. The soul, fortunately, has an interpreter, often an unconscious one, but still a truthful interpreter, and in the eye, my eye, rose to his, and while I looked in his fierce face, I gave an involuntary sigh, and his grip was painful, and my overtaxed strength almost exhausted. "Never," he said as he ground his teeth, "never was anything at once so frail and so indomitable. A mere reed she feels in my hand," and he shook me with the force of his hold. "I could bend her with my finger and my thumb. Oh, what good would it do if I bent and I uptore and I crushed her? And consider the resolute, wild, free-thinking thing looking out of it, defying me with more than courage, with a stern triumph. Whatever I do with this cage, I cannot get at it. The savage, beautiful creature. If I tear and I rend and I slight the prison, my outrage will only let the captive loose. I conquer that I might be of the house, but the inmate would escape to heaven before I could call myself the possessor of the clay-dwelling place. And it is you, spirit, with the will and the energy and the virtue and the purity that I want, not alone your brittle frame of yourself, that you could come from the soft flight and nestle against my heart. And if you would, seized against your will, you will elude the grasp like an essence, and you will vanish ere I inhale your fragrance. Oh, come, Jane, please come." As he said this, he released me from his clutch and only looked at me. The look was far worse to resist than the frantic strain. Only an idiot, however, would have succumbed now. I had dared and baffled his fury. I must elude his sorrow. I retired to the door. "Are you going, Jane?" "I am going, sir." "You are leaving me?" "Yes." "You will not come. You will not be my comforter, my rescuer, my deep love, my wild woe, my frantic prayer. All are nothing to you." One unutterable pathos there was in his voice. How hard it was to reiterate firmly, "I am going." "Jane, Mr. Rochester!" "Withdraw, then. I consent, but remember, you leave me here in anguish. Go up to your own room and think over all that I have said, and Jane, Cast a glance on my sufferings and think of me. He turned away and threw himself on his face on the sofa. Oh, Jane, my hope, my love, my life, and broke in anguish from his lips, and then came a deep, strong sob. I had already gained the door. Oh, but reader, I walked back, and I walked back as determinedly as I retreated. I knelt down by him, and I turned his face from the cushion to me. I kissed his cheek and smoothed his hair with my hand. God bless you, my dear master, I said. God keep you from harm and wrong, and direct you, solace you, and reward you well for your past kindness to me. Little Jane's love would have been my best reward, and without it, my heart is broken. But Jane will give me her love, and yes, notably, generously. Up the blood rushed to his face, and forth flashed the fire from his eyes, and erect he sprang, and he held his arms out, but I evaded the embrace, and at once quitted the room. Farewell, was the cry of my heart as I left him. Despair added, farewell forever. That night I never thought to sleep, but a slumber fell on me as soon as I lay down in bed. I was transported in a thought to the scenes of childhood. I dreamt that I lay in the red room at Gateshead, that the night was dark, and that my mind impressed with strange fears, the light that so long ago had struck me into a syncope, and recalled in this vision, and seemed glidingly to mount the wall, and the trembling to pause in the center of the obscured ceiling. I lifted my head to look. The roof resolved to clouds, high and dim. The gleam was such as the moon imparts to vapors that she is about to sever. I watched her come, and I watched with the strangest anticipation, as though some word of doom were to be written on her disk. She broke forth as never moon yet burst from a cloud. A hand first penetrated the sable folds, and waved them away. Then not a moon, but a white human had shone in the azure, and inclining in a glorious brow earthward, it gazed and gazed on me. It spoke to my spirit, and immeasurably distant was the tone, yet it was so near, and it whispered in my heart, my daughter, flee temptation. Oh, mother, I will. And so that was how I answered. And after I had wakened from the trance-like dream, it was yet another night, but July nights are short, and soon after midnight dawn comes. It could not be too early to commence the task that I must fulfill. And so I rose, and I was dressed, for I had taken off nothing but my shoes. I knew where to find in my drawer some linen, a locket, a ring, and in seeking these articles I encountered the beads of pearl necklace Mr. Rochester had forced me to accept a few days ago. I had left that it was not mine. It was the visionary bride's who had melted in an air. The other articles I made up in my parcel was my purse containing 20 shillings, as that was all I had, and I put it in my pocket and tied on a straw bonnet, and pinned my shawl, and took the parcel and my slippers, which I could not put on just yet, and stole from my room. Farewell, kind Mrs. Fairfax, I whispered as I glided past her door. Farewell, my darling Adele, I said as I glanced towards the nursery. No thought could be admitted of entering to embrace her. I had to deceive a fine ear. For aught I knew it might now be listening. I would have got past Mr. Rochester's chamber without a pause, but my heart momentarily stopped its beat at the threshold. My foot was forced to stop also. No sleep was there. And again he sighed while I listened. There was a heaven, a temporary heaven in this room for me, if I chose. I had but to go in and say, Mr. Rochester, I will love you and live with you through life till death. And fount of rapture would then have sprung to my lips as I thought of this. That kind master, who could not sleep now, was waiting with impatience for day. He would send for me in the morning, and I should be gone. He would have sought me, and he would have done so vainly. He would feel himself forsaken and his love rejected. He would suffer, perhaps now even grow desperate. And I thought of this too. My hand moved towards the lock, and then I caught it back and glided on. Drearily I wound my way downstairs. I knew what I had to do, and did it mechanically. I sought the key of the side door in the kitchen. I sought, too, a phial of oil and a feather. I oiled the key and the lock, and then I got some water, and I got some bread as well, for perhaps I should have to walk far, and my strength, sorely shaken as of late, must not break down. All of this I did without one sound. I opened the door and I passed out, and shut it softly behind me. Dim dawn glittered in the yard. The great gates were closed and locked, but a wicket in one of them was only latched. Through that I departed. It, too, I shut, and now I was out of Thornfield. A mile off beyond the fields lay a road which stretched in the contrary direction towards Millcote, a road that I had never traveled, but often noticed and wondered where it had led to. Thither I bent my steps. No reflection was to be allowed now. Not one glance was to be cast backwards, not even one forward. Not one thought was to be given either to the past or the future. The first was a page so heavenly sweet and so deadly sad, that to read one line of it would dissolve my courage and break down my energy. The last was an awful blank, something like the world when the deluge was gone by. I skirted fields and hedges and lanes till after sunrise. I believe it was only a lovely summer morning, and I know my shoes which I had put on when I left the house were soon wet with dew. But I looked neither to the rising sun, nor the smiling sky, nor the wakening nature. He who is taken out to pass through the fair scene to the scaffold thinks not of the flowers that smile on his road, but of the block in the axe edge, of the disseverment of bone and vein, of the grave gaping at the end, and the thought of drear flight and homeless wandering. And oh, with agony I thought of what I left. I could not help it. I thought of him now and in his room, watching the sunrise, hoping that I should soon come to stay, that I would stay with him and be his. I longed to be his. I panted to return. It was not too late, and I could yet spare him the bitter pang of bereavement. As yet my flight, as I was sure, was undiscovered. I could go back and be his comforter, his pride, his redeemer from misery and perhaps from ruin. Oh, that fear of his self-abandonment, and far worse than my abandonment. Oh, how it goaded me, and how it barbed arrowhead at my breast. It tore me when I tried to extract it, and it sickened me with remembrance as it thrust it farther in. Birds began singing in brake and copse, and birds were faithful to their mates, and birds were emblems of love. So what was I? And in the midst of my pain of heart and frantic effort of principle, I abhorred myself, and I had no solace from self-approbation, none even from self-respect. I had injured, wounded, and left my master. I was hateful in my own eyes, and still I could not turn nor retrace one step. God must have led me on, and as to my own will or conscience, impassioned grief and trampled one and stifled another. I was weeping wildly as I walked along my solitary way. Fast and fast I went like one delirious, a weakness beginning inwardly and extending to the limbs, and it seized me and I fell. I lay on the ground for some minutes, and I pressed my face to the wet turf, and Then I had some fear or hope that here I should die, but I was soon up and crawling forwards on my hands and knees, and even then again raised to my feet, as eager and as determined as ever to reach the road. And when I got there, I was forced to sit and rest under the hedge. And while I sat, I heard wheels and saw a coach come on. I stood up and lifted my hand, and it stopped. I asked where it was going, and the driver named a place a long way off, and where I was sure Mr. Rochester had no connections. I asked for what sum he would take for me to go there, and he said 30 shillings, and I answered that I only had about 20, and that he said he would try to make it do, and he further gave me leave to get into the inside of the vehicle, and I was surprised that it was empty. So I entered and was shut in, and then it rolled on its way. Oh, gentle reader, may you never feel what I had then felt. May your eyes never shed such stormy, scalding, heart-wrung tears as they had poured from mine. May you never appeal to heaven in prayer so hopeless and so agonized as in that hour left from my lips. For never may you, like me, dread to be the instrument of evil to what you wholly love. Whew, that was one hell of a chapter. Oh my God. Man, a lot definitely went down. So I am going to do another one. And so we are heading on to chapter 28? Yes, chapter 28. 2 days are past, and it is a summer evening. The coachman has set me down at a place called Whitecross, and he could take me no farther for the sum that I had given, and I was not possessed of another shilling in the world. The coach is a mile off by this time, and I am alone. At this moment I discover that I forgot to take my parcel out of the pocket of the coach, where I had placed it for safety, and there it remains, and there it must remain. And now I am absolutely destitute. Whitecross is no town, nor even a hamlet, but it is a stone pillar set up where 4 roads meet. It is whitewashed, as I supposed, and it would to be more obvious at a distance and in the darkness. 4 arms spring from its summit. The nearest town to which these point is according to the inscription. Distant 10 miles, the farthest above 20, and from the well-known names of these towns, I learned that the county that I have been lighted, a North Midlandshire, and dusk with moorland, and ridged with mountain. This I see. There are great moors behind and on each hand of me. There are waves of mountains far beyond that deep valley at my feet. The population here must be thin, and I see no passengers on these roads. They stretch out east, west, north, and south, white, broad, lonely, and they are all cut in the moor, and the heather grows deep and wild to the very verge. Yet a chance traveler might pass by, and I wish no eye to see me now. Strangers would wonder what I am doing and lingering here at a signpost, evidently objectless and lost. I might be questioned, and I could give no answer. But what would sound incredible and excite suspicion? Not a tie holds me to human society at this moment, and not a charm nor hope calls me to where my fellow creatures are. None that saw me would have a kind thought or a good wish for me. I have no relative but the universal mother of nature. I will seek her breast and ask for repose. I struck straight into the heath. I held on to a hollow that I saw deeply furrowing in the brown moorside. I waded knee-deep in its dark growth, and turned with its turnings, and finding a moss-blackened granite crag, and in it a hidden angle, I sat down under it, and high banks of moor were just about me. The crag protected my head, and the sky was over that. Some time passed before I felt tranquil even here. I had a vague dread that wild cattle might be near, or that some sportsman or poacher might discover me. And if a gust of wind swept the waste, I looked up, and fearing that it was a rush of a bull, if a pullover had been whistled, and I imagined it a man, and finding my apprehensions unfounded, however, and calmed by the deep silence that reigned as evening declined at nightfall, I took confidence. As yet as I had not thought. I had only listened, watched, and dreaded. Now I regained the faculty of reflection. What was I to do? Where to go? Oh, intolerable questions they were. When I could do nothing and go nowhere. When a long way must be measured by my weary and trembling limbs before I could reach human habitation. When cold charity must be entreated before I could even get a lodging, and reluctant sympathy importuned, almost certain repulse in that would be incurred, before my tale could be listened to or one of my wants relieved. I touched the heath, and it was dry, and yet warm with the heat of the summer day. I looked at the sky, and it was pure. A kindly star twinkled just above the chasm ridge, and the dew fell, but with propitious softness, and no breeze whispered. Nature seemed to me benign and good. I thought that she loved me, outcast as I was, and I, whom from man could anticipate only mistrust, rejection, insult, and then clung to her with filial fondness. Tonight, at least, I would be her guest, as I was her child. My mother would lodge me without money and without price. I had one morsel of bread yet, the remnant of a roll that I had brought in. I saw ripe bilberries gleaming here and there, like jet beads in the heath. I gathered a handful and ate them with the bread. My hunger, sharp before, was not if satisfied, was appeased by this hermit's meal. I said my evening prayers, and at its conclusion, and then chose my couch. Beside the crag, the heath was very deep, and when I lay down, my feet were buried in it. Rising high on each side, it left only a narrow space for the night air to invade. I folded my shawl and doubled, and spread it over for me as a coverlet. A low, mossy swell was my pillow, and thus lodged I was not, at least at the commencement of the night, cold. My rest might have been blissful enough, only a sad heart broke it. It plained of a gaping wound and its inward bleeding, its riven cords. It trembled for Mr. Rochester and his doom. It bemoaned him with bitter pity, and it demanded him with ceaseless longing. And an impotent as a bird with both wings broken, it still quivered its shattered pinions and in vain attempts to seek him. Worn out with this torture of thought, I rose to my knees. Night was come, and with her planets as they were risen, it was a safe and still night, and too serene for the companionship of fear. We know that God is everywhere, but certainly we feel his presence most when his works are on the grandest scale and spread before us, and it is in the unclouded night sky where his words wheel their silent course. That was we who read clearest his infinitude, his omnipotence, and his omnipresence. I had risen to my knees to pray for Mr. Rochester, and looking up, I, with tear-dimmed eyes, saw the mighty Milky Way. Oh, and remembering what it was, what countless systems there swept space like a soft trace of light, I felt the might and the strength of God. Sure was I of his efficiency to save what he made, and convinced that I grew that neither earth should perish, nor one of the souls it treasured. I turned my prayer to thanksgiving. The source of life was also the savior of spirits. Mr. Rochester was safe, and he was God's, and by God he would be guarded. I again nestled to the breast of the hill, and ere long, in sleep forgot sorrow. But next day want came to me pale and bare, long after the little birds had left their nests, long after bees had come in the sweet prime of the day to gather the heath honey before the dew was dried, and when the long morning shadows were curtailed and the sun filled the earth and the sky. I had gotten up, and I looked around me. What a still, hot, perfect day it was. What a golden desert this spreading moor. Everywhere was sunshine. I wished that I could live on in it. And then I saw a lizard run over the crag, and I saw a bee busy among the sweet bilberries. I would fain at the moment that I have become a bee or a lizard, or that I might have found fitting a nutriment and a permanent shelter here. But alas, I was a human being, and had a human being's wants. I must not linger where there was nothing to supply them. I rose and I looked back at the bed that I had left. The hopelessness of a future. I wished but this, that my Maker had that night thought good to require my soul of me while I slept, and that this weary frame, absolved by death from further conflict with fate, and had now but to decay quietly and mingle in peace with the soil of this wilderness. Life, however, was yet in my possession, and with all its requirements and pains and responsibilities, the burden must be carried, the want provided for, and the suffering endured, the responsibility fulfilled, and such as I set out. White Cross regained, and I followed a road which led from the sun, now fervent and high. By no other circumstance had I will to decide my choice. I walked a long time, and when I thought that I had nearly done enough, and might conscientiously yield to the fatigue that almost overpowered me, might relax this forced action, and sitting down on a stone, I saw near as submit resistlessly to the apathy that clogged the heart and limb. I heard a bell chime, a church bell. I turned in the direction of the sound, and there, amongst the romantic hills, whose changes and aspect that I had ceased to note an hour ago, I saw a hamlet and a spire. All the valley at my right hand was full of pasture fields and cornfields and wood, and a glittering stream ran zigzag through the varied shades of green, and the mellowing grain and the somber woodland and the clear and sunny lea. Oh, recalled by the rumbling wheels to the road before me, I saw a heavily laden wagon laboring up the hill, and not far from beyond were 2 cows and their drover. It was human life and human labor that were near. I must struggle on and strive to live and to bend to toil like the rest. At about 2 o'clock p.m., I entered the village, and at the bottom of one of its streets there was a little shop with some cakes of bread in the window. Oh, I coveted a cake of bread. With what refreshment that I could perhaps regain a degree of energy. Without it, it would be difficult to proceed. The wish to have some strength and some vigor returned to me as soon as I was amongst my fellow beings. I felt it would be degrading to faint with hunger on the causeway of a hamlet. Had I nothing about me that I could offer in exchange for one of these rolls? I had considered, and I had a small silk handkerchief tied around my throat. I had my gloves, and I could hardly tell how men and women in extremities of destitution proceeded. I did not know whether either of these articles would be accepted, and probably they would not be. But I must try. I entered the shop, and a woman was there, and seeing a respectably dressed person, a lady as she supposed, she came forward with civility, and asked how she could serve me. And I was seized with shame, and my tongue could not utter the request that I had prepared. I dared not offer her the half-worn gloves or the creased handkerchief, and besides, I felt that it would be absurd. I only begged permission to sit down a moment, as I was tired, and disappointed in the expectation of a customer, she coolly acceded to my request. She pointed to a seat, and I sank into it. I felt sorely urged to weep, But conscious how unseasoned such a manifestation would be, I restrained it, and soon I asked her if there were any dressmaker or plain workwomen in this village. Yes, 2 or 3, quite as many as there was an employment for, and I reflected at that. I was driven to the point now that I was brought face to face with necessity. I stood in the position of one without resource, without a friend, without a coin. I must do something, and what I must apply somewhere, and where. Do you know of anybody in the neighborhood that a servant is wanted? Nay, I can't say. What was the chief trade in this place, and what do most of the people do? Well, some were farm labourers, and a good deal worked at Mr. Oliver's needle factory and at the foundry. And did Mr. Oliver employ women? Nay, it was men's work. And what do the women do? I not, was the answer. Some does one thing, and some does another thing. Poor folk mun get on as they can. She seemed to be tired of my questions, and indeed, what claim had I to importune her? A neighbor or two came in at that moment. My chair was evidently wanted, and so I took my leave. I passed up the street, and looking as if I went at all the houses to the right hand and to the left, but I could discover no pretext, nor see an inducement to enter any. I rambled round the hamlet, and going sometimes at a little distance and returning again for an hour or more, and much exhausted and suffering greatly now for want of food, I turned aside into a lane and sat down under a hedge. Ere many minutes had elapsed, and I was again on my feet, however, and again searching for something, a resource or at least an informant. And then a pretty little house stood at the top of the lane, and with a garden before it. It was exquisitely neat and brilliantly blooming. I stopped at it. What business had I to approach the white door or touch the glittering knocker? In what way could it possibly be the interest of the inhabitants of the dwelling to serve me? Yet I drew near and knocked. A mild-looking and cleanly attired young woman opened the door, and as such a voice as much be expected from a hopeless heart in a fainting frame, a voice wretchedly low and faltering, I asked if a servant was wanted here. No, said the woman. We do not keep a servant. Can you tell me where I could get employment of any kind? I continued. I am a stranger without acquaintance in this place, and I would like some work no matter what. But it was not her business to think for me or to seek a place for me. Besides, in her eyes, how doubtful must have appeared my character, position, and tale. She shook her head, and she was sorry that she could not apply me with any information, and the white door was then abruptly closed. And if only she held it open a little longer, I believe that I should have begged a piece of bread, for I was now brought quite low. I could not bear to return to the sordid village, where besides no prospect of aid was visible. I should have longed rather to deviate to a wood I saw not too far off, and which appeared in its thick shade to offer an inviting shelter. But I was so sick and so weak and so gnawed with nature's cravings that instinct kept me from roaming around abodes where there was a chance of food, and solitude would be no solitude, and rest would be no rest. While the vulture of hunger thus sank beak and talons into my side, I drew near houses, and then I left them, and then came back again and wandered away, always repelled by the consciousness of having no claim to ask, and no right to expect interest in my isolated lot. Meantime, the afternoon had advanced, and while I thus wandered about like a lost and starving dog, in a crossing of the field I saw the church spire before me. I hastened towards it, and near the churchyard and in the middle of the garden stood a well-built though small house, which I had no doubt was the parsonage. I remembered that strangers who arrive at a place where they have no friends and who want employment sometimes apply to the clergyman for introduction and aid. It is the function of a clergyman to function to help, at least with advice, and those who wish to help themselves. I seem to have something like a right to seek counsel here, and renewing my courage and gathering my feeble remains of strength, I pushed on. I reached the house and knocked at the kitchen door. An old woman opened, and I asked if this was the parsonage, and she responded, "Yes." "Is the clergyman in?"
"No."
"Would he be in soon?"
"No, he is gone from home."
"Ah, to a distance?"
"Oh, not so far. Happened about 3 mile. He should be called away by now by the sudden death of his father. He was at the marsh end now, and would very likely stay there for a fortnight longer."
"Was there any lady of the house?"
"Nay, there was naught but her, and she was the housekeeper."
And of her, reader, I could not bear to ask the relief for want of which I was sinking. I could not yet beg, and again I crawled away. Once more I took off my handkerchief, and once more I thought of the cakes of bread in the little shop. Oh, but for just a crust, but for one mouthful to allay the pang of famine. Instinctively I turned my face again to the village, and I found the shop again, and I went in. And though others were there besides the woman, I ventured the request, that if she would give me a roll for a handkerchief. The woman looked at me with evident suspicion.
"Nay, I never sold stuff that way."
Almost desperate, I asked for half a cake, and she again refused.
"How could I tell that where I got the handkerchief you got there?"
she had told me. "Will you take my gloves?"
"Oh, no. What could I do with them?"
Reader, it was not pleasant to dwell in these details, and some say that there is an enjoyment looking back on painful experiences past. But at this day I cannot scarcely bear to review the times to which I allude. The moral degradation and the blent with the physical suffering form was too distressing a recollection ever to be willingly dwelt on. I blamed none of those who repulsed from me. I felt as if what was to be expected and what could not be helped. An ordinary beggar is frequently the object of suspicion, a well-dressed beggar inevitably so. To be sure, what I begged was employment, but whose business was it to provide me with employment? Not certainly of the persons who saw me then for the first time, and who knew nothing about my character. And as to the woman who would not take my handkerchief in exchange for her bread, why, she was right, if the offer appeared to her sinister or in the exchange unprofitable. Let me condense now. I am sick of the subject. A little before dark I passed a farmhouse, and at the open door of which a farmer was sitting eating his supper of bread and cheese, I stopped and said, "Will you please give me a piece of bread? I am very hungry." He cast on me a glance of surprise, but without answering he cut a thick slice from his loaf and gave it to me. I imagine he did not think I was a beggar, but only an eccentric sort of lady who had taken a fancy to his brown loaf. And as soon as I was out of sight of his house, I sat down and I ate it. I could not hope to get a lodging under a roof, and sought in it the wood that I had been alluding to. But my night was wretched and my rest broken. The ground was damp, the air was cold, and besides, intruders passed near me more than once, and I had to again and again change my quarters. There was no sense of safety or tranquillity befriended to me, and towards morning it rained, and the whole of the following day was wet. Oh, do not ask me, reader, to give a minute of account of that day. As before, I sought work again, and as before, I was yet again repulsed. As before, I starved, but once again did food pass my lips. At the door of a cottage I saw a little girl about to throw a mess of porridge into a pig trough. "Oh, will you give me that?" I asked, and she stared at me.
"Mother," she exclaimed, "there is a woman who wants to give me the porridge." "Well, lass," replied a voice within, "give it to her if she's a beggar. The pig doesn't want it."
The girl emptied the stiffened mold into my hand, and I devoured it ravenously. As the wet twilight deepened, I stopped into a solitary bridle path, which I had been pursuing an hour or more. And then I noticed that my strength was failing me, and that I could not go much farther, and that I should be an outcast again on that night. And while the rain descended so that I must lay my head on again the cold and drenched ground, I feared that I could not do otherwise, for who would receive me? But it would be very dreadful with this feeling of hunger, faintness, and chill, and this sense of desolation, this total protestation of hope. In all likelihood, though, I should die before morning. And why cannot I reconcile myself to the prospect of death? Why do I struggle to retain a valueless life? Because I know, or I believe, that Mr. Rochester is indeed living, and then to die of want and cold is a fate to which nature cannot submit passively. Oh, Providence, I wished for it to sustain me longer, to aid me and to direct me. And then my glazed eye wandered over the dim and misty landscape, and I saw that I had strayed far from the village, and was quite out of sight. The very cultivation surrounding it had disappeared. I had, by crossways and by paths, once more drawn near the tract of a moorland, and now only a few fields, almost as wild and unproductive as the heath from which were scarcely reclaimed, lay between me and the dusky hill. And then I thought to myself that I would rather die yonder in a street or on a frequented road. And so I reflected to myself that it would be far better that the crows and ravens, and if there had been any ravens in this region, could pick my flesh from my bones, and that they should be prisoned in the workhouse coffin and moulder in a pauper's grave. And to the hill then I turned, and I reached it, and I remained now only to find a hollow where I would lie down, and feel at least hidden if not secure. But all the surface of the waste looked level. It showed no variation but of tint, green where rush and moss overgrew the marshes, black where the dry soil bore only heath. Dark as it was getting, I could still see the changes, though, but as mere alternations of light and shade, for color had faded with the daylight. My eye still roved over the sullen swell and along the moor edge, vanishing amidst the wildest scenery, when at one dim point, far and among the marshes and the ridges, a light sprang up. And then I thought to myself that it was an ignis fatuus, and then I expected that it would soon vanish. But it burnt on, and however quite steadily, neither receding nor advancing. And then I thought again to myself that it was a bonfire that had been just kindled. And then I watched to see whether it would spread, but no, it did not diminish and it did not enlarge. And then I thought again that it must have been a candle in a house. And then I also conjectured to myself that if it was a candle in a house, then how could I ever reach it? And it was much too far away, and if it was a yard closer to me, then what would it avail? I should but knock at the door and have it shut in my face again, of course. And so I sank down where I stood, and I hid my face against the ground, and I lay still a while. The night wind swept over the hill and over me, and died moaning in the distance. The rain fell fast, and wetting me afresh to the skin. Could I but have stiffened to the still frost, the friendly numbness of death, it might have pelted on. I should not have felt it, but my yet living flesh shuddered at its chilling influence. I rose ere long. The light was yet there, shining dim but constant through the rain. I tried to walk again. I dragged my exhausted limbs slowly towards it. It led me aslant over the hill and through wide bog, which could have been impassable in winter, and was splashy and shaking even now in the height of summer. Here I fell twice, but as often as I rose and rallied my faculties, this light was my forlorn hope. I must gain it. Having crossed the marsh, I saw a trace of white over the moor. I approached it and was delighted when it was a road or a track, and it led straight up to the light, which now beamed from a sort of knoll amidst a clump of trees. It was firs, apparently, from what I could distinguish, and the character of their forms and foliage through the gloom. My star vanished as I drew nearer, and some obstacle had intervened between me and it. I put out my hand to feel the dark mass before me. I discriminated through the rough stones of a low wall, and above it something like palisades, and within a high and prickly hedge. I groped on. Again, a whitish object gleamed before me. It was a gate. It was a wicket. It moved on its hinges as I touched it. On each side stood a sable bush holly or a yew. Entering the gate and passing the shrubs, the silhouette of a house rose to view, black, low, and rather long, but guiding light shone nowhere. All was obscurity. Were the inmates retired to rest? I thought to myself. I feared that it must be so, and in seeking the door I turned an angle, and there shot out a friendly gleam again, and from the lozenged panes of a very small latticed window, and within a foot of the ground, made still smaller by the growth of ivy or some creeping plant, whose leaves clustered thick over the portion of the house wall in which it was set. The aperture was so screened and narrow that curtain or shutter had been deemed unnecessary, and when I stooped down and put aside the spray of foliage shooting over it, I could see all within. I could see clearly a room with sanded floor, a clean scour, a dresser of walnut, a pewter plate, and ranged in rows, reflecting the redness and radiance of a glowing peat fire. I could see a clock and a white deal table, as well as some chairs. The candle whose ray had been my beacon burnt on the table, and by its light an elderly woman, somewhat rough-looking, but scrupulously clean, like all about her, was knitting a stocking. I noticed these objects cursorily only, and in them there was nothing extraordinary. A group of more interest appeared near the hearth, and sitting still amongst the rosy peace and warmth suffusing it. It was two young, graceful women, ladies in every point. They sat in a low rocking chair, and the other on a lower stool. Both were in deep mourning of crape and bombazine, which somber garb singularly set off their very fair necks and faces. A large old pointer dog rested its massive head at the knee of one girl, and in the lap of the other was a cushioned black cat. A strange place that this was, a humble kitchen for such occupants. And who were they? They could not be the daughters of the elderly person at the table, for she looked like a rustic, and they were all delicacy and cultivation. I had nowhere seen such faces as theirs, and yet, as I gazed on them, I seemed intimate with every lineament. I cannot call them handsome. They were too pale and grave for the word. As they each bent over a book, they looked thoughtful almost to severity. A stand between them supported a second candle and two great volumes, to which they frequently referred, comparing them and seemingly with the smaller books that they held in their hands, like people consulting a dictionary to aid them in the task of translation. This scene was as silent as if all the figures had been shadows and their firelit apartment a picture. So hushed it was. I could hear the cinders fall from the grate and the clock tick in its obscure corner, and I even fancied that I could distinguish the click-click of the woman's knitting needles. When therefore a voice broke in the strange stillness at last was audible to me. "Listen, Diana," said one of the absorbed students. "Franz and the old Daniel are together in the night time, and Franz is telling the dream from which he is awakened in terror. Oh, listen!" And in a low voice she read something of which not one word was intelligible to me, for it was an unknown tongue, neither French nor Latin. Whether it were Greek or German I could not tell. "That is strong," she said, as she had finished. "I relish it." And the other girl, who had lifted her head to listen to her sister, repeated, while she gazed at the fire, a line of what had been read. At a later day I knew the language and the book. Therefore I will here quote the line, though when I first heard it, it was only like a stroke on the sounding brass to me, conveying no meaning. So this is in German. I'm going to do my best to pronounce this. "Da trat herver ein Ansten, weil der Sterne nacht." Good, she exclaimed, while her dark, deep eyes sparkled. "There you have a dim and mighty archangel fitly set before you. The line is worth 100 pages of fustian. Ich wage den Gedank in der Scheilen meins Zorns und die Work mit dem Gertrude means Grimms." "I like it." Both were again silent. "Is there only one country where they talk like that?" asked the girl. "Yes, in a far larger country than England, where they talk in no other way." "Well, for sure case, I not how they can understand one another." "Oh, which would you tell me then, I guess?" We could probably gather some of what they said, but not all, for we are not all as clever as you think. We don't always speak German, and we cannot read it without a dictionary to help." "And what good does it do you?" "We mean to teach it sometime, or at least the elements, as they say, and then we shall get on more money than we do now." "Very like. But give owner study, and you've done enough for tonight." "I think we have. At least I'm tired. Mary, are you?" "Oh, mortally. After all, it's a tough work, fagging away at a language with no master but a lexicon." "It is especially such a language as this crabbed but glorious Dutch. I wonder when St. John will come home." "Surely he will not be gone long. It is just 10. It rains fast. Hannah, will you have the goodness to look at the fire in the parlor?" The women rose, and she opened the door, through which I dimly saw a passage, and soon I heard her stir the fire in an inner room, and she presently came back. "Ah, childer," she said, "it fair troubles me to go into yond room now, and it looks so lonesome with the chair empty and set back in the corner." She wiped her eyes with her apron, and the two girls, grave before, looked sadder now. "Ah, but he is in a better place," continued Hannah. "We shouldn't wish him here again, and then nobody need to have a quieter death, nor had he." "You say that he never mentioned us?" inquired one of the ladies. "Ah, he hadn't time, bairn, and he was gone in a minute, and that was your father. And he had been sitting ailing like all day before, but not to signify. And when Mr. Sir St. John asked if he would like either of you to be sent for, he fair laughed at him. And he began again with a bit of heaviness in his head the next day. That is a fortnight since.
And then he went to sleep and never wakened, and he were amongst the stark when your brother went for to chamber and to fand him. Oh, childer, that's all the last of the old stock for ye. And Mr. Old Sir John, oh, it's like a different sort to them. It's all gone. For all your mother working with ye, oh, you almost book learned, and she would be the worst picture o' to ye. Oh, Mary, Dina's more like your father.
I thought them so similar that I could not tell where the old servant, for which I now concluded her to be, saw the difference. Both were fair-complexioned and slenderly made. Both possessed faces full of distinction and intelligence. One, to be sure, had hair a shade darker than the other, and there was a difference in their style of wearing it. Mary's pale brown locks were parted and braided smooth, and Diana's duskier tresses covered her neck with thick curls. The clock struck 10.
"Ah, you want your supper, I'm sure," observed Hannah. "And so will Mr. Sir John when he comes in."
And she proceeded to prepare the meal. The ladies rose, and they seemed to withdraw to the parlor. To this moment I had been so intent on watching them that their appearance and conversation had excited in me so keen an interest that I had half forgotten my own wretched position. Now it reoccurred to me. More desolate and more desperate than ever, it seemed from contrast, and how impossible did it appear to touch the inmates of this house with concern on my behalf, to make them believe in the truth of my wants and woes, to induce them to vouchsafe a rest for my wanderings. As I groped out the door and knocked on it hesitatingly, I felt that last idea to be a mere chimera, and Hannah opened.
"What do you want?"
she inquired in a voice of surprise as she surveyed me by the light of a candle she held. "May I speak to your mistresses?" I said.
"Oh, you better tell me what you have to say to them. And where do you come from?"
"I am a stranger."
"What is your business here at this hour?"
I want a night's shelter, as I am in the outhouse or anywhere, and just a morsel of bread to eat." Distrust and the very feeling that I dreaded appeared in Hannah's face.
"I'll give you a piece of bread," she said after a pause. "But we can't take in a vagrant to lodge. It isn't likely."
"Oh, please do let me speak to your mistresses."
"No, I do not think so. And what can they do for you? You should not be roving about now. It looks very ill."
"But where shall I go if you drive me away? What shall I do?"
"Oh, I'll warrant you know where to go and what to do. Mind you don't do wrong, that's all. Here is a penny. Now go."
"A penny cannot feed me, and I have no strength to go further. Please, please, don't shut the door. Oh, for God's sake! Oh, for God's sake!"
"I must. The rain is driving in."
"Please tell the young ladies. Let me see them."
"Indeed, I will not. You are not what you ought to be, or you wouldn't make such noise. Now move off."
"But I must die if I am turned away."
"Not you. I am feared that you have some ill plans agate, and that bring you about folks' houses at this time o' night. Oh, if you have any followers or housebreakers or the such like anywhere near, you may tell them that we are not by ourselves in this house, and that we have a gentleman and dogs and guns."
Here the honest but inflexible servant clapped the door and bolted it within. This was the climax. A pang of exquisite suffering, a throe of true despair. It rent and heaved my heart. Worn out, and indeed as I was, not another step could I stir. I sank on the wet doorstep, and I groaned. I wrung my hands and wept in utter anguish. Oh, this spectre of death! Oh, this last hour approaching in such horror! Alas, this isolation, this banishment from my kind! Not only the anchor of hope, but the footing of fortitude was gone, at least for a moment, but I was lost as soon as I endeavored to regain. And then I said to myself, But I can't die, and I believe in God. Oh, let me try to wait. His will is in silence." These words I not only thought but uttered, and thrusting back all my misery into my heart, I made an effort to compel it to remain there, dumb and still. "All men must die," said a voice quite close at hand, "but not all are condemned to meet a lingering and premature doom, such as yours would be if you perished here of want." "Who or what speaks?" I asked, terrified at the unexpected sound and incapable of deriving any occurrence a hope of aid. A form was near. What form the pitch-dark night and my enfeebled vision prevented me from distinguishing. And with a loud, long knock, a newcomer appealed to the door.
"Ah, is it you, Mr. St. John?" cried Hannah.
Yes, yes. Open quickly."
"Well, how wet and cold you must be, such a wild night as this. Oh, come in. Your sisters are quite uneasy about you, and I believe that there are bad folks about. There has been a beggar woman, and I declare that she is not gone yet. Oh, lay down there. Get up, for shame. Move off, I say."
"Hush, Hannah. I have a word to say to the woman. You have done your duty in excluding, and now let me do mine in admitting her. I was near, and I listened to both you and her. I think this is a peculiar case, and I must at least examine into it. Young woman, rise, and pass before me into the house." With difficulty I obeyed him, and presently I stood within that clean, bright kitchen on the very hearth, trembling and sickening, conscious of an aspect in the last degree ghastly, wild, and weather-beaten. The two ladies, their brother, Mr. St. John, and the old servant were all gazing at me. "St. John, who is it?" I heard one ask. "I cannot tell, and I found her at the door," was the reply.
"She does not look white," said Hannah.
"As white as clay or death," was responded. "Oh, she will fall. Let her sit." And indeed my head swam, and I dropped, but a chair received me. I still possessed my senses, though just now I could not speak. "Well, perhaps a little water could restore her. Hannah, fetch her some. But she is worn to nothing. Oh, how very thin, and how very bloodless."
"Oh, a mere spectre."
"Is she ill or only famished?" "Famished, I think. Hannah, is that milk? Give it to me, and a piece of bread." Diana, I knew her by her long curls, which I had drooped between me and the fire as she bent over me. She broke some bread and dipped it in milk and put it to my lips. Her face was near mine, and I saw that there was pity in it, and I felt sympathy in her hurried breathing. In her simple words, too, the same balm-like emotion spoke. "Try to eat." "Yes, please try," repeated Mary gently, and Mary's hand removed my sodden bonnet and lifted my head. I tasted what they offered me, feebly at first, and then eagerly soon. "Not much at first. Restrain her," said the brother. "She has had enough," and he withdrew the cup of milk and the plate of bread. "Oh, a little more, John. Just look at the avidity in her eyes." "No more at present, sister. Try if she can speak now. Ask her name." I felt that I could speak, and I answered, "My name is Jane Elliot." Anxious as ever to avoid discovery, I had before resolved to assume an alias. "Where do you live? Where are your friends?" I was silent. "Can we send anyone for you that you know?" I shook my head. "What account can you give of yourself?" Somehow now I had once crossed the threshold of this house, and once was brought face to face with its owners. I felt no longer outcast, vagrant, and disowned by the wild world. I dared to put off the mendicant, to resume my natural manner and character. I began once more to know myself, and when Mr. St. John demanded an account, which I at present was far too weak to render, I said after a brief pause, Sir, I can give you no details tonight.
But what then, he said, do you expect me to do for you?
Nothing, I replied. My strength sufficed for but a short answer, and Diana took the word. Do you mean, she asked, that we have now given you what aid you require, and that we may dismiss you to the moor and a rainy night? I looked at her, and she had, I thought, a remarkable countenance, an instinct both with power and goodness. I could sudden courage, and answering her compassionate gaze with a smile, I said, I will trust you, and if I were a masterless and a stray dog, I know that you would not turn me from your hearth. Oh, and you would not do so tonight. And as it is, I really have no fear. Do with me and for me as you like, but excuse me from much discourse. My breath is short, and I feel a spasm when I speak. All three surveyed me, and all three were silent. Hannah, said Mr. Sir St. John, at last, let her sit there at present, and ask her no questions. In 10 minutes more, give her the remainder of that milk and bread. Mary and Diana, let us go into the parlor and talk over this matter. They withdrew, and very soon one of the ladies returned. I could not tell which. It was a kind of pleasant stupor that was stealing over me as I sat by the genial fire. In an undertone she gave some directions to Hannah, and ere long, with the servant's aid, I contrived to mount a staircase. My dripping clothes were removed, and soon a warm, dry bed received me. I thanked God, and experienced amidst unutterable exhaustion a glow of grateful joy and sleep.
And that's the end of that chapter. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed listening to me read more of Jane Eyre. I will be reading more tomorrow, so if you want, please feel free to like, subscribe, or follow, and that way you can get notifications when I go live. You can find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and TikTok. Those are when I go live, and you can get notifications for my lives. So with that being said, I hope to see you guys tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and I hope you all stay safe and stay geeky as always, my